Is Anthony Davis permanently going to play center? It appears like that may be the case. I'm actually really curious about the fact that he's mostly played center for the last few years. And this is actually, if you're not really, up to date with the Laker fan base, this has been a pretty big topic for discussion over the last handful of years with AD. Oh, he's a five. Oh, he's not a five. He's a four, XYZ. We won when we played double big man, all these other things. So for today's video, we're going to talk about some of the pursuits that the Lakers have in regards to another big man, because regardless of what position AD plays, it's clear that they are lacking in the big man department because they are missing two of their main big men in Hayes and Wood being injured right now. Hayes came back from injury, went back that exact same game. So it is what it is. They're relying on Koloko, but maybe they could use another big man out there, especially a bigger one, because Koloko is built similarly to Hayes, where he's long and lanky, right? Also, another thing we're going to talk about is a quote from JJ Redick, I believe, after the Lakers' previous game about the Anthony Davis at the five stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy. If this is your first time here, make sure you stick around and subscribe to the Basketball Bulletin, where Trevor and I cover the entire league at large. Trevor is away. I think he's got some family thing going on, visiting some family. I don't know, man. I talk to him every day, but I always forget these things. I'm bad at that stuff. But regardless, we're going to be covering a ton of content, especially as we head into trade season. So make sure you guys, again, stay up to date with us here. Make sure you subscribe. About 80% of viewers aren't. So what are you doing? Join that winning 20%. All right. So let's see the post here from Sidery that's been up for a while. The Lakers are showing serious trade interest recently in two center targets, Rob Williams and Jonas Valanciunas. So that is cool. I don't really have much of a problem with that. The Jonas thing is kind of funny because that's got to be like the loudest rumor I've seen in a long time. Like it feels like something that could happen any moment now, especially now that some of the doors have been blown off with trades happening sooner than you would typically expect on December 15th. So those previous two trades, we've already seen two trades, which is crazy, are going to be made official today. And this Jonas one could happen at any moment, it feels like, because there's been a lot of talk about it. So on the topic with Jonas, I don't think he's somebody that's going to fix the Lakers' issues. I don't think he magically will make this team a contending team or anything like that. I don't think he's going to magically fix whatever problems they could potentially have. But what I will say is I do think that he is somebody that will slide into the team and play some valuable minutes, because they don't got a lot of guys on the team that play some of the minutes that he can give you. And I'm not really expecting for him to do all too much, maybe just about 10 minutes per game, but that would be pretty huge for them, because again, they need some reliable backup center play. Notice I said backup. That'll segue us in a moment into our other talking point. I don't think he'll be starting at center. If he does, it'll probably be for specific matchups. JJ seems to be okay with switching around the starting lineup depending on who they're playing against. If he needs a certain type of player in there, he feels comfortable, apparently, shuffling in and out. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, Jonas, not been great altogether this year, but I'm not really he's been okay. He's been mostly what you would expect, but he's not been he never really has been, I guess I should say. That's more fair. He's never really been anybody crazy, but that's fine. Again, the Lakers aren't looking for that. They're not looking for a starting caliber center to go out there and play 30 minutes per game. They're looking for another center that could be a part of their rotation, giving you for Washington 12 points. He's coming off the bench as well for them, which is probably the best case scenario. Shooting 91% from the free throw line. That's definitely going to regress, but he's still a good free throw shooter, especially for a center. Giving you 8 rebounds, 2 assists. So good ball mover there. Not the best rim protector. Averages 1 block per game for his career and basically half a steal for his career as well. Shooting 56% from the field, and not the floor spacer some people seem to think he is. I mean, he can occasionally step out there and hit one. Right now, he's taking half of one per game. Typically on his career, he's averaging about 1 per game at about 34%. So, he's just, every now and again, he'll hit one for you. That's pretty much what I can say. But again, what the Lakers need in a big guy is somebody that they can throw out there that's bigger, that could hold up and not just get pushed under the basket for those matchups where they'd play a center that could do that potentially, like Embiid or Jokic comes to mind, those types of guys. Now, again, if you're not a Lakers fan, you're thinking that's crazy. He's not going to do anything to Jokic. And you're right. Jokic literally dropped 57, something like that on him the other day, which Jokic is having an insane season. It's crazy. And it's crazy because they're not winning as much as you would think with the numbers he's putting up, but that's because the roster needs a lot of tweaks around him. But he himself has been insane. Anyway, so, yeah, he literally put 57 on him. But I think what could be big for the Lakers is having somebody that, again, is not going to get pushed under the basket. And that frees up AD to be more of a roamer. Like in that specific matchup, it basically, you know how for the last couple of years they tried to do LeBron or Rui, and they would hold up as best they could, right? But they try to put those guys on Jonas so AD could be a roamer, come over weak side, things like that. You're basically going to be trying to do the same thing, but with a bigger guy than with those guys. And that should, in theory, work out better. So I think that's more or less what they're looking for. And I don't think that he's going to be someone that comes in and starts. And I also don't think that's the case when we talk about this post from JJ Redick here, or this quote, excuse me. Redick said he hasn't considered playing two big man lineups featuring Koloko and AD. Redick's response on why is because it's not a good fit. And frankly, I don't think it's a great fit with Hayes either. We're really encouraged with the growth Rui has had, and whether it's LeBron or Rui playing the four with Jackson or Koloko, we like that better. So early on in this season, there were moments where AD would be out there with Hayes, and it would be, at the tail end of a quarter or something like that for 4 or 5 minutes. And I said around that time that I really thought that was a good idea because I liked the idea of doing that so you could kind of like, because they had all their forwards hurt at a point, basically. They still kind of do, of Wood out, Hayes out. He's not a forward, but I meant Vando, the mythical creature that doesn't exist. But anyway, I said that I would like for them to play more bigger lineups because you can kind of slot everyone else down, and that would kind of help with the deficiency of size that you would have instead of hardlining at 80s a center. Koloko's coming in as a backup. But initially, they started off with mixing and matching a little bit, and there were some ups and downs with that. If I could actually pull up the lineup data while I'm talking about this, maybe we can see something about that really quickly. But yeah, with some ups and downs with that. And, he doesn't seem to be a big fan of it, which is fair. But yeah, I think that a lot of Lakers fans are not very happy about that because that's not what they want to see. Because when you go back to 2020, they were successful with that group and they were able to do that. Now, I've said a lot of times that I don't think Anthony Davis, and this isn't to say he's worse or anything like that. I think he's extremely dominant, but just in a different way. I don't think AD is the same player as he was in 2020, and I think that matters a lot. The Koloko and AD have never been on the court together. That's this season. That's funny. Let's find out Hayes because he's the only other center that they've got. Yeah, I don't think he's the same guy, and I think that matters a lot. So here's some examples of lineups with AD and Hayes together. So, so first and foremost, it hasn't had a lot of opportunities. It would, like I said, it would be like an end of quarter thing. He'd go to it for like 2 or 3 minutes and then kind of just, wouldn't see it again. But these are negative lineups. 17 possessions is the most used, so still an incredibly small sample size. LeBron, Max Christie, and Gabe minus 65 points per possession, 53rd percentile there. It's funny because the defense is like, good Lord, they're getting blood. That's not what you would think. You would think it would be maybe the offense that tanks, but the defense is tanking like crazy. Next most used lineup isn't as bad where you put Connect in for Max. So you know what it is also is Gabe Vincent and Max they're playing better now. But when we used to regularly see this lineup, I think it's unfair to actually, now that I think about it, I think it's unfair to gauge this lineup off this data because when we would see this lineup was in the beginning of the season, and Max and Gabe were crazy bad to start the season. Again, they're playing better now, but they were just really, really, really bad to start the season. Max was so bad that he got pulled from the rotation. He earned a spot back in it, and he's been playing, but he was so bad he got pulled. Gabe barely started playing better when he started getting more starter minutes, so maybe he just needs a bigger role. But yeah, I don't think that lineup was good at all because of that, which is why they just struggled. But again, putting two of their better defensive perimeter players in there, you'd think the defense wouldn't struggle as much as it does, but it does. Moving on from that, though, but the other lineups here with Connect in for Max, they're not getting destroyed anywhere near as bad and it's 2 less possessions. But again, this is all small sample size stuff. So they don't really typically go to it all too often. And the annoying thing with the AD at the 5 thing is that I do think that above all else, regardless of, like I said, I don't think he's the same player. I think he doesn't move the same. He's bulked up. Aside from the shot, everyone kind of talks about the shot. If you go watch clips of AD from 2020, he's so much more fluid. He looks more like a wing out there than he does now. Now he just looks like he's a big man. He's the last dude up the court every time. He's just more of a lumbering big nowadays. Back then, he looked more athletic, versatile. And again, he's a little bit older, obviously. Obviously, that goes without saying. But he just looks like a different player. And I think he's extremely dominant. I think that his game has also evolved to where he dominates closer to the basket more consistently, which is a credit to how great he is. He's an awesome player. But I do think that that matters. And so I think this is more or less what JJ is talking about when he says he doesn't like the fit of putting him alongside Koloko. He doesn't like putting him alongside Hayes. But I do think what that means is that maybe the foot speed is slow, but I think that if Wood comes back, you may actually see that. I think you may actually see Wood and AD lineups because of the floor spacing element. Wood is also a good defensive rebounder, good positional defender, things like that. He's not in aggregate a good defensive player, but he's better than I think he gets credit for on that end. And so I think that combo you could see pop up a little bit. But when we get Jonas, I'm telling you right now, like I said earlier, I don't expect him to start. He's going to be basically backup 15 minutes per game, which is why it's tricky to say, should the Lakers go out there and trade for another center when all the chips are down, when they need a win, they're going to put 80 at the 5. And we go back to 2020. One thing I've said repeatedly is regardless of whether they won that year or not, it wasn't specifically because the double big man lineup was some unbeatable thing. What it was is because the fact that double big man lineup was an option. And that's what I think the Lakers need. I think they need an option. I've talked about this before, but this is a look at Anthony Davis's percentage of time spent between positions in his entire career. Throughout his career, he spent 40% of his time at power forward, 60% at center throughout his career. Now, this could be skewed by the last few years being damn near 100% of his time at center. So there's that. I will give it a little bit of like a, disclaimer for that. But even throughout the earlier portions, New Orleans, Hornets, before they became the Pelicans, that's so funny. We look at the first couple years in LA, the 2020 year, 60-40. He didn't play 100% of his minutes. The funny thing, fans don't really talk much about the following season, but he played almost all of his minutes the following season. That Dennis Schroeder, Marc Gasol, Wesley Matthews, Andre Drummond later, that team, he played 90% of his minutes that year at power forward, whereas in the 2020 year, Dwight JaVale, it was 60%. But I think what it was is the optionality, right? You had options to go to those bigger guys, and it really showed itself in the playoffs where you had matchups where it's like, JaVale, you're not in our rotation for this series. Dwight is. Oh, Dwight, you're not in a rotation. JaVale is. And then they also had unsung hero, Markieff Morris, who nobody ever talks about, who also played some small ball 5 for them. And they were just really big. It's funny because the talking point back then was the Lakers' small ball, quote unquote, was bigger than everyone else because they were putting out LeBron, who's 6'8", Kuz, who's 6'8", 6'9", Morris, who's 6'8", 6'9", AD, who's 6'10", 6'11", in that area. And they're beating you to death with these groups. So that's kind of what it was. So I think the optionality does matter. That's the most important thing. It's not some magic bullet to go double big, but I just don't think we should or can going forward have this. The crazy thing about it is that I don't know if it's just, like I said, I think maybe when Wood comes back, it changes. But the thing is that it feels like JJ has the same thought process as Darvin did, where it's like, no, this guy's the center, which he's been extremely dominant as a center, but I think he'd be dominant at whatever position you put him at. So, yeah, they've got nearly the same thought process. The last time he even played close to a split in his minutes was 76-24 in the 21-22 year. That was the last year I think they actually tried to do double bigs because they had – this was the Vogel year, right? I think this was the Vogel year. Can I pull this up? 2020, 21-22 Lakers? What's up with that year? Yeah. I think this is the Vogel year, right? So they had, this is the Melo. They brought Dwight back. Most people don't remember that Dwight came back on this team. This was Russ's first year. This is the old team. AR's rookie year, I believe. Yeah. Rondo came back for a part of the season. Sekou Doumbouya. Yeah, so the last time there was a decent split, DeAndre Jordan too. The last time there was a decent split with AD's minutes was this season because they had more bigs on the roster, and they were using Dwight, they were using DeAndre to a point. There was actually, I think DeAndre was a starting center to begin the year, wasn't he? They were trying to use him like he was JaVale in spurts to start the season. It was kind of weird. That was a weird year. But that was the last year that AD played a good split of his minutes at 76-24. But since then, it's been basically 100%, 96-97. But again, it does feel like that may be just how these guys feel. So circling back to the Sidery post, I didn't really talk much about Rob. I'll pull him up here. But the main issue with Rob is that he's always hurt. I think he's out right now, for the record. I think he's literally out right now, right? Or he's just come back. I haven't checked him out recently, but he's always been hurt. That's been a huge problem with him. I mean, look at the games played throughout his career since 19. 32, 29. Okay, a little shortened season here, so it's not as bad, but it is pretty bad. It's still like a little over a third of the season or something like that. 51 that year, or 52, 61, 35, 6 last year. So far, 7 this year. The crazy thing, though, is that when he's out there, he is a defensive demon. Offensive rebounds also giving you 2.5 per game, but defensive demon giving you 2 blocks per game currently this season in 18 minutes. I mean, he'd be nice to have. And I think he's the ideal archetype of a player you compare on this team as a dual big in terms of like rotation big on this team. I think I'd like this more conceptually than I would Jonas. It's just he's always hurt. That's the tricky part, right? He's also, I believe, younger too by a good bit, actually. So like, I think he's the better player to try to target, but you'd have to really talk yourself into it because he might want to being Vando 2.0, where it's just like this guy's never out there, right? He finished in the 1 year he played a good bit of his games, the 21-22 season. He finished 7th in DPOY, which is kind of crazy. So that just tells you that he is somebody that you can really, really count on the defensive end when he's out there. It's just tricky to get him out there. So all in all, though, I do think you have more size and more consistency with Valanciunas, but I do think you have probably bigger upside, higher upside with Rob, but it's a tricky thing to say to go and get him. So all in all, like I said earlier, it does seem like the Valanciunas thing is probably going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if I got on my phone right now and it's done, hopefully. Because the Lakers could use another big. But I do think things will get interesting when some of their other guys start returning to play in the lineup. So what do you guys think? Post all of that down below. Speaking of which, Trevor and I did an awesome stream yesterday that you can find on the screen right now where we cover all of the latest trade information, and you're not going to want to miss it. I'll see you all there.